Good evening. Welcome to episode 26 of Will You Review My CV? I'm Alan Wozni, your host, and today's episode focuses on a pro basketball athlete that is playing in the European League in Spain. And back in May 2021, he was seeking, or he had posted on the LinkedIn Premium group that he was seeking to transition back after he retires from basketball into the communications field. Although I prepared this and submitted this advice on LinkedIn back in May 2021, watching the NBA playoffs this past couple of weeks, and most notably the rapid rise and fall of the the North, the Toronto Raptors from Game 5 to Game 6 against the Philadelphia 76ers, I was actually reminded, I reminded myself that I'd given this advice to a pro basketball player. So in my view, this job seeker should probably consider, I'm struggling with the my mouse here. In my view, this job seeker should consider combining his basketball skills with his communication skills to find a way to get a role with one of there's 30 NBA teams, or so to find like a communications role within the NBA teams. There's 30. Now that doesn't work. I looked, if you Google this, the Division 1 teams, Division 2 teams, and Division 3 combined, they're well over 1,000 teams. We're talking about basketball in U.S. college, NCAA Division 1 to 3. I didn't go further. I didn't go deeper. There's probably many bottom tier teams. But anyway, so in the NCAA basketball, there are 1,000 plus teams. Again, the local markets, I know there's going to differ, but there's always someone who needs a pro basketball player who's got the knowledge to commentate. But anyway, so language, if you talk about Europe, language may be an issue and maybe a bit of a barrier to some of the teams with the non-native English speaking countries. There is one league, and I heard that. So during commentary of the NBA playoffs, I heard about this one league. It's called the G. I think it's the G League, and there are 30 teams, and I understand most of them are feeder teams into the NBA. So that's kind of, that's guys get relegated to the G League for conditioning or whatever. Similar to NHL, they go to the American Hockey League or whatever, the real men's league. It's pro, semi-pro, I guess they'd call it. So I think those teams would need qualified experts to commentate during radio or TV. You've got radio and TV. They're separate. The commentators for radio are separate than the commentators for the TV, for television or whatever, live broadcasts. I mean, now today, Facebook, I think you do live Yahoo's doing it, or Yahoo and Amazon are doing live broadcasts. Twitter's doing live broadcasts. So there's a lot of opportunities in media, the various media medium. They call it the OTT, over the top. There's there's a traditional television. There's a whole plethora. So I think you multiply the 1,000 teams or 30 teams, you'd multiply that by 3-4 times, depending on the forum or fora of communicating or broadcasting the games. Anyway, there are thousands. There are likely thousands of universities and high schools across North America that could benefit from such talent. So, in my view, and I'll say this anytime, my view, the best commentators of any sport are the ones who played professionally, or they just played. They know the game. So when they're commentating, they'll give observation, even curling, the Canadian national sport. But even any sport, I believe my experience is improved when I watch tennis, when I watch when I watch hockey. If the commentator knows the game, American football, if they know the game, it makes my experience better as a watcher. Now, I should note, I never considered any of this when I compiled my recommendations back in May last year. So it's not that I came up with new stuff. I just was thinking in my head that, wow, communications, broadcast, frontline. I mean, it's kind of a sexy thing to work in the media and telecommunications field. or communications field, particularly for a sports team. So anyway, let's dive right in. Let's dive right into the presentation I prepared. And I'm having struggle here. Where's my shared screen? All right, I'm struggling to find my shared screen. Let me just pause this. Okay, so I managed to find my screen. I'm going to share this here. Okay. So this is episode 26. Today's date is 22nd of May. The career advice number is number 414. That was given last May, on the 22nd of May, 2021. And Kaj-Bjoern Sherman, sorry, Kaj-Bjoern, if I don't pronounce that correctly, I believe that's right. He is a professional basketball player in Spain. I don't know if it's Catalina. I don't know the name of the city. I didn't really have that much dialogue with Kaj-Bjoern, other than, we connected on LinkedIn, and it's been more informal, offline, really more online, but no discussion really getting to. I'd like to, but it'd be because it's just fun to pick his brain. But so anyway, let's dive in. Oops. Oh, okay. So. Okay. So let's look at the next slide. So Kaj-Bjoern, I came across this on the LinkedIn Premium group, and he had written the following. Hello, everyone. I'm a current international professional athlete with a strong background in communications, but have had serious struggles looking for any entry-level career positions that can be done remote outside of data work. Love the team aspects of work and would love any advice on a field hiring or a specific company that allows me remote work. Thanks for any insight. Now, I didn't focus on the remote side of things because I've been working remotely for a long time, even particularly when I was overseas. So, there's a lot of companies out there that do promote or remote, particularly with the COVID. There's a lot of remote hiring, and in his field of communications, you can do a lot of this stuff remotely, but I'm not going to get into that too much. Okay. So this is the overview of my recommendations as the one or two listeners or viewers of this episode of this channel will know. Gary Vaynerchuk is like my go-to guy. He's my right-hand man, and I don't know him. He doesn't know me. I just know his content. And I think that's the first for him, Kaj-Bjoern. I think this is the go-to person for you to listen and learn, what I'm sitting here doing this YouTube channel because of Gary Vaynerchuk. So anyway, my podcast, the Calgary Business Podcast, the reason there's a relevancy there is two episodes I've done last year with communication students from the Mount Royal University here in Calgary, with experts from the PR and communications field. And then I looked at, sport tech, or I call it sport tech innovation. It's just innovation in the sports field to help companies. You're going to see some of the examples there. Digital marketing innovation. Back in 2019, 2020, I had a massive list of digital and marketing type companies. Not so easy to find today. There's a lot of healthcare startup, but digital marketing is still very prevalent. Of course, everything we do today is digital. Most things we do are digital. So the marketing aspect and combining those two is very important. And then Clubhouse. I'm going to share some ideas on Clubhouse that I think are so relevant even today, a year on, I think is very relevant, more so today than it was a year ago, because Clubhouse was so new last year. So let's dig in. For Gary Vaynerchuk, this is an extensive, exhaustive list because I've been listening to him for nearly 4 years now, since March 2018. So that's 4 years. Gosh, Gary, we've been partners for 4 years, and you didn't even know it. But look at, so he's got books. Crush It, he wrote in 2009. I've said this before. This is almost like a template. I've added a few things here, but Crush It 2009, jab, jab, jab. I think there's 3 or 4 jabs, and then you do a right hook. 2013. The book I've read in detail, I've listened to on Audible, in the car, driving, wherever. It's called Crushing It. Numerous examples. In fact, Lewis Howes, he was He was a former pro athlete. I think he played I think he played in the Arena League. Got injured, and his shoulder or knee, I can't remember. Lived on his sister's couch for a number of months, maybe a couple of years, I don't know. So he went from a pro athlete. I know Kaj-Bjoern, you're a pro athlete, and then Lewis Howes he's got it's called the School of Greatness, and I think he started with interviewing just pro athletes. I think he started interviewing pro athletes and then went from there, and just he's got the ear of a lot of people. He even there was a post he made after not LeBron James, after anyway, he's met with a lot of pro athletes, and so that the School of Greatness. But Lewis Howes is featured in the Crushing It book. And then there's a new book this year. Last year, Gary brought out was called 12 and a half. And he's just basically going through the issues of small business, empathy, gratitude, and so forth that he's repeated in prior years through his podcast. The 12 and a half is a culmination of all of his advices he's given over the years. I want to go back to the Crushing It again. Lewis Howes, it was Kobe Bryant. He posted, I think, just shortly after his interview with Kobe Bryant, after Kobe Bryant had passed away. So, there's a lot of, the Crushing It has a lot of features of entrepreneurs, of people who went from the bottom to the top of wherever they are. So then the other side, very, very relevant, is the Vayner Sports. This is very relevant to Kaj-Bjoern. They represent NFL and Major League Baseball players. And I know Gary loves basketball. I don't know if he represents, I'm sure they do, but the NBA players, if it doesn't today, I'm sure they will in the future. But he always says, what's the ROI, or the return on investment of a basketball? For Gary Vaynerchuk, he always says it's nil. But for LeBron James, it's $1 billion. So, depending on who you are, that the sport where you lean in on, that's where it's most profitable. That's so he talks about that. But I said the other thing, esports. He's recently, or I think that was last year, the Minnesota Rocker, which I have no clue what they play. It's an esports franchise, and he's bought into them. And incidentally, in Minnesota this year, St. Paul, he's a thing called the Vayner, Vaynercom or Vaynercon. It's all about the NFT production, but it's going to be in Minnesota, and no surprise there. And then I know he also represent MMA fighters. So really the gamut of fighters and giving the representation. One thing I want to say about this, it's not really Vayner Sports. Gary gave a talk once to some football players, college football players, in the room, and he said, right now you're at the top of your game. You walk around the hallways, and you're the king of the school, or the people know you, they respect you. As soon as your career is over, if you don't make the NFL, or you're out of the NFL, you don't do anything with your brand today, you're going to be nothing. I can't help you. Come to me today while you're on the top of your game. And that's when he helps some of the players. And that really fits well. Gosh, I could just go all over, but if you take Shaquille O'Neal, these guys are into venture capital today. I know Shaq does the Epson printers, but he does, they support small business in different communities. And there's a lot of NFL players, a lot of former NFL, NBA, other major league players that you see them in venture capital today. So they've taken their money and they're making it work, but their brand is coming with them post retirement. Gary did. This is something I shared with Kaj-Bjoern back in May last year. The marketing for the Now. It was a series he did, and this was episode 19. So I don't know how many they're at today, but this was episode 19, March 2021. And they focused on how to turn customers into fans. So Kaj-Bjoern, you're well aware of fans because as a in the basketball and any pro sport or most sports, there's always fans in the audience. If it's a lower tier, there's probably less than two fans in the audience. But and they featured the Cleveland Browns CMO, the chief marketing officer of the Cleveland Browns, and literally that was a great. How do you just have customers? So how do you have fans? In his case, how would Kaj-Bjoern, how would you turn your fans? You're an MVP. You wrote in your website, you wrote in your LinkedIn profile that you recently became league MVP. So, those things are today, what's happened today, and leapfrogging that into the future. Marketing for the now is talking about using different platforms, social media, Instagram, TikTok, and the creativity around that. So I think it's very important if you're in marketing communications, and particularly as a pro football player or pro basketball player, how to brand that, how to let others know about that aren't necessarily following the European League, Liga EBA. I think it's called the Liga EBA. And then finally, the Gary Vaynerchuk, the high school party concept. This is relevant to a lot of small businesses, a lot of businesses who are just kind of struggling on that using social media. And so the high school party concept goes back to the 90s, 80s, whatever it was, when you were in high school and you were, the guy or girl who hosted the party, they went from a D on the social scale to an A or a B, or, they rose up because they hosted the party and everybody knew about them. So that he gives examples of how to apply that to business. And I'm going to talk about that later. I'm going to go to Clubhouse because the Clubhouse examples fits very nicely with the high school party concept and Kaj-Bjoern's basketball prowess, or his place in pro basketball. All right. And I mentioned the Calgary Business Podcast. I think I've done 336 episodes since September 2019. But more important, relevant to Kaj-Bjoern is the two podcasts, the Q&A series. I believe I did 21 episodes last year, 2021, with students. And I think about 56 students were involved with the expert guests. So the Q&A was back and forth. I just sat back for the ride. It was a lot of fun. But these were great. So there were students from Mount Royal University here in Calgary, and they were in the PR and communications. I don't know the exact title of that department, or their discipline, or I guess the department. But Lauren Tralford, Michaela St. Cyr, and Earl Webb, they went toe to toe. They went and bounced ideas around Lana Rogers. She's the CEO and founder of Gentle Lion Communications here in Calgary. Now, Lana, it was actually fun. They asked her, what would you recommend for a young student to work for a big shop, little shop? Great dialogue, great dialogue. And Lana gave her own personal experiences as she was going through the industry. And then the second episode was with Grace Quinn, Eliza Balkwill, and Paul Lesage, with Bob Sumner. Now, Bob was fun. Bob's like an old TV, his Media Bob, I think his handle on Instagram is Media Bob, but 2 B's, because he said Media Bob was taken. But he's a former TV executive here in Calgary, worked for several of the local television companies here in Calgary. And now he's the director of media relations at Parker PR here. Now, Alan Parker was also a guest on my podcast. So that I love that field, because they're in the front line, as it were, for businesses promoting their product, their service. But anyway, I remember the one story. Bob had talked about how it changed this TV studio. They used to do commercials right in the studio. They did commercials for different brands. And one of them was a bed manufacturer or mattress company. They brought the where do we put this? They just dropped the mattress in the studio. So, different times, of course. Make sure. Okay. And then sport tech innovation. Now, I tend to look at these things like when you're looking for a new car, or so when you buy a new car, or you're looking for one and you see it everywhere. You buy a new pair of shoes, you see, other people wearing your shoes, the clothes, or whatever it is. And so I don't see the sport related ones all the time. But again, there's a lot of other innovation out there, not just sport tech. But the 4 that I came up with, and I did find through other sports personalities I know, or on LinkedIn. So Player Data, they're out of Scotland. They have wearable tech for athletes. And so obviously you can link that in IoT and Internet of Things, and link that into your computer and get immediate feedback of your play. I didn't do a deep dive into Player Data, but I imagine they've raised funds for that. So this is why, I've said here, this information comes from VC newsletters, Strictly VC, and primarily Strictly VC and FinSMEs. I tend not to look at, I don't have the time to look at all of them. So these are my 2 go-to now. I used to look at VentureBeat, TechCrunch, Crunchbase, UKTN, quite regularly, all of them. But now I just focus on the two. But anyway, Ballogy out of Austin, Texas. They have a tracking and analytics app for youth and amateur athletes, and you can upload, I think, onto your mobile app and get the analytics and get real-time feedback. eFuse out of Ohio, connecting games with brands, tournaments, and jobs. And I think it's almost, I mean, these things are real. I think it's more for, I believe it's for esports, e-gaming type of area. And then Pixelot out of Israel, they use a software, they have sports production software. So for, to help pro and amateur teams. And I believe it's a video, and it uses artificial intelligence to follow the players along the field. Because now I remember, now they wrote on a website, they have a tracker of their data, certain key data, and 1.9 million games have been broadcast to date. And there's number of hours, which is pretty extensive, that they also show on their website. But that's pretty cool, because then you can get feedback, not have to, use the third-party broadcaster. This is much more cost effective to do it yourself, but also to get, to have that detailed footage that's yours. And I'm not talking about the cost of the Pixelot thing, but the technology would be amazing for certain, to show your players and not have to worry about somebody filming it properly. And then the digital marketing, this is a list I put together with 5 or 6. It looks like 8, okay, 10. But the list I gave, I think there was at least 50. There's at least 50. I laundry dumped. Poor Kaj-Bjoern. He probably got overwhelmed. And look, I just had this for a long time, because it was in 2019, 2020. A lot of this stuff there was 2-3 a day. People were raising on digital marketing platforms. I struggled this last couple of months to find. I was looking in March and in April this year. I only found a couple. I think it's just there's just so much options out there today. So there's probably very little room for innovation. But just a couple here: Luminad, SoSci, Partnerize, Vimo, Zyper, Influence.co, 6 Sense, BlueConic, MindTickle, and Cliently. I mean, I was going to go into details and try to give some discussion points around these, but there are just so many. And I literally just picked up these 10 randomly from the list. There are so many, and they all do different things. MindTickle, I remember, I think MindTickle said something around that they could, any platform, anywhere, they can give you feedback and get your product out there. But anyway, that's a sample from 2019 to 2020, just before COVID. And then, because I was doing this advice for Kaj-Bjoern last May, in May 2021, I looked at some more recent funding announcements. ActiveCampaign, April 2021. They enable SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprises, to run digital marketing campaigns with automated sales and marketing follow-up. So it's just here are the tools. We'll give you the tools. You do what you need to do. And in fact, and then here's some data for you that it automatically runs for sales and marketing. Zoom in March 2021, it turns product content into useful. So just whatever content you have, from the instruction manuals, from the basic ingredients but it just basically takes it says, we turn your mundane product content, the packaging material, whatever it is, into useful customer support data. So I don't begin to understand what they're doing. I didn't look into details. It's not that I begin to understand. I didn't look into details, but I can understand they just help you market it better, which is otherwise boring. How do you market this cup? Well, it's steel, it's shiny, it's got, you can grab it. It's, I think that's what they would do. Probably some innovative content material. And then, so that was last year. I looked at their websites. Then this was my last 2 months. I looked hard for marketing. Now, I'm going to share this with you. There's a lot of health tech, a lot of crypto funding, blockchain, NFT, collabs, fintech. I'm not saying these are the only things being funded, but those are predominantly health tech, med tech, a lot of pharmaceuticals. that's a lot of funding. Those are predominant that I'd see. So digital marketing, I literally struggle to find these three examples. So movable ink, AI or artificial intelligence enabled to personalize marketing content. So I imagine, just looking at people, connecting the people, the consumer, and making it marketing to them. So using AI for that. So it probably, you looked at this thing, like when you Google, you do Google search, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute, and then later it comes up, the ad content comes up. That's probably in that space where the ad, oh, I just Googled this. How did they know? Well, because it's artificial intelligence, and it knows your search and is working with YouTube. I mean, okay, Google owns YouTube, I think. So anyway, Norby, they raised 4.6 million just in April, announced this past April. Success and marketing platform for creators. And then Dianthus, if I pronounce that right, in March this year, they raised 11.5 million. It's a consumer engagement and brand impact platform. So Clubhouse. I love Clubhouse for many reasons, and it gives you a forum to communicate. That's not kind of your standard typical. Now, I know Twitter has spaces, and they do live TechCrunch. One of my podcasts, I listen to the Equity podcast by Alex Wilhelm and Natasha Mascarenas. They do the podcast on Facebook, on Twitter Spaces. But anyway, so Clubhouse, you start a chat room. It's Tanisha Cherry. I had her on my podcast last February. We came across, I was in a Clubhouse chat room and there was Tanisha. I said, oh, you literally were chatting. We were chatting. I said, oh, you're from Cal. I said, yeah, I have this podcast. And so Tanisha's like, yeah, I'm in Calgary as well. I have a podcast. She's got the Cherry Lounge podcast. And so I invited her on to my podcast because she does a welcome to Clubhouse chat. She does that welcome to Clubhouse. She probably doesn't do it anymore. That's been a year now. But I get notifications on my phone from Clubhouse who's on Clubhouse, because I kind of want to know. And Tanisha's still there regularly. She's a marketer. She invites marketing companies, influencers onto her chat into her chat room, and they talk about, It's not my gig. It's not my gig to talk about marketing. But if you're a marketing and communications person, like Kaj, that probably helpful. Probably helpful for him to listen to or sit on some of those. But that's their business. That's what they do. Is to generate leads and to market and sell. So the people she invites on there are very real. So anyway, so Tanisha was on my podcast. We talked about learning how to use Clubhouse, and it's a lot of fun. But anyway, anyone is welcome to go and listen to that, or to click on YouTube. But there's a link to her YouTube channel, which she talks about welcome to Clubhouse. Now, the Gary Vee and the high school party concept. So remember what I said earlier. Gary does a podcast with Inside 4Ds, where he invites small businesses to his podcast to chat. They pay for that privilege to sit around the room, but Gary bounces ideas for all of them, even if one person has the question. And I believe he was in Florida, or someone had a small business in Florida. He says, you know what? She wanted to know how to engage my customers, how to get my customers. He says, invite them to on any night, invite them for a wine, spend on a wine and cheese, a steak, whatever it is. Invite them out to and to get their views on the subjects of interest to them. And so that's the party. You invite them to the party, and they talk about the issues of importance. And so that concept works, I believe, in a lot of scenarios. But in this case, Kaj-Bjoern, invite your teammates onto chat. You can record this. You can record it off your phone or wherever, and have that content to share wherever you want to share. And I mentioned earlier, there were 1,000 teams in NCAA and the feeder teams. There are players that match all that. So, but invite them to talk. Invite them to talk about the on-court experiences. How many times you had a triple-double? What injuries have you dealing with? How many times you made a three-pointer? How far? What's the furthest you made a three-pointer? What are your off-season plans? What do you do? What do you do for fitness? What do you do for during season for fitness is different. Obviously, your regime is different. And then what do you plan to do after you retire from basketball? Who's your favorite NBA player? Whatever topics they were of interest, let them talk, and you host it. You host the party, and let them talk. There are Andreessen Horowitz, Ben Horowitz, Mark Andreessen. They get on a weekly Friday night chat. What was it? There was one of the artists. I mean, there's people join that Clubhouse. You can see who's in there, and they get some really important people, really influential people on some of those chat rooms. I don't follow it every day but some of the dialogue is just great. The engagement that people have. So get that engagement with your fellow players. Then invite Spanish national players. Get them on. Yeah, go out and ask them. Once your chat room gets to be the life of the party in European League circles, invite the national team. I mean, Paul Gasol, he played in Toronto a couple of years ago when they won the national the NBA, the championship, We the North. And I wrote another one, Leandro Balmaro. I don't know the Spanish. He would know them better than I do. Invite them onto your chat room. Invite 20 of them. Invite 50 of them until you get one. Once you get one, you could probably get more to come to your party. And then just invite players and coaches from around the league. Get them into your chat room. I mean, what have you got to lose? Get the ball boy, or the water boy. Get anybody, the organ player. I mean, in hockey, they have the organ player. Just get anybody to talk. And then once you get enough people, you'll have to turn people away. So, all right. Now, the last point I want to make is this is new. Again, it wasn't in my May 2021, but Kaj-Bjoern has taken the initiative to learn to code. Well done, brother. I mean, it's incredible in this tech world. Like, as I mentioned earlier, the tech innovation, digital marketing is just one. That list of 50 companies, like health tech, HR tech, med tech, accounting tech, small businesses, automating the processes for small businesses, HR tech. I mean, there's legal tech. There's a lot of innovation everywhere. So he's recognized, Kaj-Bjoern, you recognize that. Hats off. Fact that you've done a career pivot, you actually work in, I can't remember the name of the company based on your LinkedIn profile. But anyway, some ideas. 100 Days of Code. The Twitter account is called 100x Code. There are several other ones. You can use the hashtag. I got into that. I learned about it 4 years ago when I was looking for coders for my blockchain project. And I used to follow it. I used to comment and people were like, who's this wacky guy? They follow me now. I don't post anymore as much as I used to on Twitter. I used to just follow them because I see this creativity, the 100 Days of Code. I personally tried the 100 Days of Code, got stumped at day 30 or so. I was committed, and it's hard. It is hard. But anyway, so that's one idea. Just follow that, see who's in there. Maybe do it yourself as a challenge, but at minimum follow and see what people are doing, see what they're talking about. Maybe you'll increase your network. I don't know. Then there's Free Code Camp. You could do, I think 100 Days of Code is a bit misingenious here to double that, because 100 Days of Code, I think they use the Free Code Camp, free software coding data, but the newsletter, subscribe to that. It's compiled by a guy called Quincy Larson. He's the Ossia on Twitter. And the newsletter is amazing. If you're a coder, it's really great content. There's a weekly list of free coding references, even some coding challenges. And he says at each of them, it says 1 hour to complete, 3 hours to complete, 20 minutes to read, whatever it is. So I would highly recommend Kaj-Bjoern consider that. And then get your name out there with the tech recruiting firms. Most of the ones that are listed here, I've done a deep dive. I did a summation for their websites. I went and looked at not just their websites, what they do on social media, how often do they post? Not all of them, but most of them I have. So Bears Dev, I think they have like 450,000 followers on LinkedIn. I don't know the other social media platforms, but they have 3,000 employees. They are pretty big. Glowcoms, Pathrise and Commit. Pathrise is out of San Francisco. Commit is out of Vancouver. They had raised, I think, last year, sometime in late 2021, early 2020. They're smaller, but these other ones, Optimi, Jobot, Optello, Cyber Coders, Crunchboard. Sorry, Optimy, again, they have sizable followers on LinkedIn. Jobot, Optello, sizable followers. They are pretty big tech recruiters. Crunchboard, they just list, it's part of Crunchbase. They list the tech jobs that are out there. And Code Signal, Purple Quarter. I gotta tell you, the only reason I know about Purple Quarter, last year, September last year, there was a TechCrunch Disrupt. It was online, 3-day, and Purple Quarter they ran media ads. I don't know how much they paid for that, but they ran these really creative ads, and it got my attention. I'm like, I wrote it down. Who's this? I didn't realize they're out of India, and they just really recruit for CTOs. That was their sweet spot. That's what they position themselves as. We're here to recruit CTOs or chief technical officers. So those are the ones that I literally, anybody wants to, I'll share with you just my summation. It took about a half an hour each one to summarize their websites, the key things like research that they post, the jobs, the key jobs, the content that they have available for job seekers and for tech talent. Those ones have it. And then the last one, I just came across this in March of this year. They raised $60 million, HackerRank. I'd heard of HackerRank, but literally it's a matching developers with companies. And if you go to their website, or if you go and do a little bit of a deep dive, you'll see they literally they have information available for companies on staff and tech resources. And I think that's a good one. That's a good one for Kaj-Bjoern to get connected with them. If you're a tech guy, you want to be part of the tech community, these are the ones that get into those resources. So that's it. That's the summary. That's the slides. Kaj-Bjoern, career advice number 414. I've done a few, but I just think, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen here because I want to conclude. This is so important. We're struggling. Okay, here we are. Let's go. Okay. So, it is truly commendable that Kaj-Bjoern, that you're taking the time to learn to code. I personally, as I said, I made the commitment just last year, May, June last year. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the 100 days of code. I committed. So I was doing an hour. It's an hour. They recommend an hour. Like I committed an hour, and it's about what you need to complete most of the assignments. And then I made it to day 30. And the assignment, you had to take what you learned in HTML and CSS and upload it and create. You have to have the references to photos and links to websites. And I was stumped. I literally didn't. It took more than an hour. I couldn't even get it. I was going back to what I learned, copying that. It's just by the way, there's a lot of copy and pasting of code from CSS script particularly, but I couldn't get it. And I was like, it took 2 or 3 days. I'm like, I just cannot do this. Now I know with time and considerable effort, I could have probably advanced and continued on because a lot of people do it. That's what they do. But I was also started work with Hardwood at Toronto, and I was doing some work with a company, a cannabis company in their accounting. So my daytime was really getting chewed up, and so I had to stop. But the thing is, I'm not a natural coder, and although it is very, very interesting, it's most interesting. The cost, I'll call it the cost benefit ratio is just too high. The cost being the time and effort it would take me to complete the coding assignments, and the potential benefit or lack of benefit of being able to add value to others from such work. I mean, if you think about it, tech innovation is rapidly changing, and that just goes with even down to the low code, no code. Even learning some of that takes a lot of time. Low code, no code being, here you go, non-coder like myself. Here's the stuff you need to create a website. Wix. I created my website with Wix. There's a lot of that actual hardcore coding you don't have to do, but you can't, there's certain things, there's limitations with that. My point is, as coding, I mean, if you learn to code, you can create a website. I mean, there's millions of websites today. There's a lot of services to create your own website. You don't need to build the website, to learn how to code behind it. You just have a website. Here you go, here's your website. But so I think it would take me years to make any, I'm just saying personally, it would take years to get to a point where I could be functional, or something would be functional, but it'd be like a 1995 website. It was made 10 years ago because there's such rapid advancements in technology. My work would just be obsolete. And then I didn't even learn any of the new stuff. So, but what does that mean for Kaj-Bjoern? By all means, keep coding. Keep coding. I mean, and if you got the time, I mean, maybe once the basketball season starts, you probably won't have it. You'll have less time with training and all that. But keep coding. But in parallel, I would suggest that you lean in on your combined talents as a basketball player and communications. Your communications. I didn't look into detail your communications background, but in my view, some of the best commentators, and I've said this before, some of the best commentators in any sport are former athletes. I remember watching the freestyle skiing. The Canadian commentator was a French Canadian, and I just couldn't believe he was scoring. He was scoring the freestyle events at the Olympics, the Beijing or the Olympics in China, the Winter Olympics. And he was pretty much bang on the scoring. He was talking about, they were looking for the triple double. They would literally spin 560, set whatever it is, the rotations, and he counted them. So like, how could, and I Googled, and the guy was, I think he was a gold medalist in the previous Olympics. So that really made my experience, it really improved my experience as a watcher, having that commentator who knows the sport. You know, the NBA basketball players, the guys, you know, you've got to Grant Hill, I mean, the former NBA player, commentating. If you think of the FIFA World Cup, you've got that Scottish guy, or the English, even the Canadian football. If you watch the Canadian commentators on TSN, the Canadian sports, when they commentate the Toronto, I can't remember the time, you know, in the soccer league, the North American Soccer League. I mean, literally, those commentators have the knowledge of the sport. And so the footy, or whatever they call it, you know, football or soccer. And so it really changes the experience. So Kaj-Bjoern, I think that, to me, that's where your real talent. If you'd like to code, go keep coding in parallel. But gosh, the value add, you said it. If you go to his LinkedIn profile, he said, I was MVP of the league. So, you know, that's going to sway, or at least, you know, if you're commentating wherever you are, maybe you want to be a coach, but you know, that's going to sway power. When I was league MVP, but anyway, I'll stop there. As always, you know, the ideas included in this video and outlined in my career advice submissions on LinkedIn, they can be applied to pretty much any professions. And job functions. Of course, you'd have to adapt it or adopt it to meet your individual specific circumstances. But I think, you know, there's a lot of applicability across functional. This has been Will You Review My CV? Again, I'm your host, Alan Wozni. Thanks for watching. Have a great day and stay safe.